Okay, we'll wait till a few more people come on.
Before we start, I just wanted to make one more announcement about next week's class. We're going to be starting at 11 o'clock instead of noon. And we're giving Rabbi Layla a break, and a teacher that has been in our community before, Jen Raskus, who's an amazing teacher who works at the Shalom Hartman Institute here in DC, is going to be teaching on Kitisa. So spread the word, not to be missed, but don't show up at noon. You will have missed the class.
I think you'll need to announce that again in a few minutes. We'll wait a few minutes till everybody gets on and then announce it again, Audrey. That would be good. Okay, Audrey, do you think you want to begin? Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Let's begin with our bracha for study. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So today we are still with the building of the Mishkan, and particularly today we are going to be talking about two subjects, one at length and one a little bit less at length, but both of them important in terms of the Mishkan and the priests. One is the Ner Tamid, the eternal light in the Mishkan, which of course is replicated in every shul in the world. And the second is the priestly garments. And we're going to spend a lot of time on the Ner Tamid. I thought it would be interesting to see what different perspectives and different denominations do with the Ner Tamid, how they deal with them. And so we're going to start by reading in Parashat Tetzaveh at the very beginning of the Parsha, which is in Shmot and Exodus, chapter 27, the very end of chapter 27, verse 20 and 21, verses 20 and 21. Can someone read there, chapter 27, verses 20 and 21? Who's got it up? Barb?
You shall further instruct the Israelites to bring you clear oil of beaten olives for lighting, for kindling lamps regularly. Aaron and his sons shall set them up in the tent of meeting, outside the curtain which is over the ark of the pact, to burn from evening to morning before the Lord. It shall be a dew from the Israelites for all time, throughout the ages.
Okay, thank you. So what do we see immediately when about this lamp, about this light? What's the first attribute about them?
Pure
Yeah.
oil.
Nightlight.
Olive oil.
Olive oil, and notice the word here, shemen zait zach katit lemaor. It is beaten olives. You can't get the oil unless it's beaten. So that's going to be a theme in the uh, commentaries all the way through. Okay, so let's put up the source sheet. And as I said, we're going to have the different perspectives on them, perhaps ad nauseum, but if we could raise that up just a little. There we go.
But maybe you'll cover this, Mike. This doesn't describe the eternal light. It's an evening light. You turn it on when it gets dark and you turn it off when it gets bright again.
No, because in the Hebrew, and the translation is not so good here. It says it shall be a dew from the Israelites but then it says for all time throughout the ages, chukat olam ledorotam, and that has been interpreted as being the ner tamid, as being the eternal light. And over the centuries and over tradition, it has been understood to be a light that never goes out.
Does the Hebrew say from evening to morning?
Evening into morning, meaning that it never goes out.
Oh, see, 21st century says that means it's a nightlight.
Right. In our understanding, you turn it on and then you turn it off in the morning. But for them, it meant that it never went out. It never went out. So let's.
Doesn't it say that it's the curtain over the ark that should be laid from evening to morning, not the light itself?
No, let's read it again. Aaron and his sons shall set them up in the tent of meeting outside the curtain, which is over the ark of the pact, to burn from evening to morning before the Lord. It shall be chukat olam. It shall be an eternal law, lidorotam, for all the generations, for Bnei Israel. What does Barb say? This is repeated, though not word for word, in Parashat Emor in the discussion of set times throughout the year. That's correct. That's absolutely correct. So,
I'm not sure if what Aaron and his son shall set it, if that refers to the veil, the curtain, or the light.
why do you say that, Sue?
I'm looking at the Hebrew.
Yeah,
I'm looking at two different translations of it, which I have.
yeah,
Different from the translation. One of them says, in the tent of meeting without the veil, which is before the testimony, Aaron and his son shall set it in order to burn from evening to morning before the Lord.
right.
And Kaplan, Robert Alter translates it as in the tent of meeting outside the curtain, which is over the Ark of the Covenant. Aaron and his son shall lay it out from evening to morning before the Lord.
Right. And so what do you think is the significance of the difference in the translation?
I'm trying to go back to the Hebrew itself. I haven't looked at it before.
Right.
Hashavua.
I'm not sure that difference is so significant. If you look at the first sentence, ואתה תצווה את בני ישראל ויקחו אליך שמן זית זך כתית למאור להעלת נר תמיד.
Mhm.
And that's what I'm looking at, that the ner tamid is a chukat olam. And where the curtain is less significant than the fact that this is a ner tamid. This is an eternal light. And what I'm focusing on is what is the ner tamid and what is the significance of the ner tamid, not so much its placement. So, so I'm seeing it as outside the curtain, which is over the Ark of the Pact. I can't hear you, Sue. You're muted.
I, I guess I was responding to the evening to morning part, and I was thinking that the evening to morning part referred to the veil, not to the light, which is always.
Aha, aha. I see. I see. I see what you're saying. Okay, I got it. Let's go back to the Ner Tamid, and let's see what these various perspectives are on it. Let's go to Bereshit Rabbah from the Midrash Rabbah, very ancient, fourth or fifth century CE. Can someone read there from the first act of service?
I'll read it.
Okay.
The first act of service, which our ancestors were commanded to perform in the Mishkan tabernacle, was to light the eternal lamp, the Ner Tamid. This is analogous to the creation of the world, the beginning of which is, and Yahweh said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Bereshit 1:3. The Ner Tamid corresponds to the first light, that light whose source is infinite and whose power is thousandfold greater than the power of our sun. The light which was hidden away to serve the righteous in the future to come.
There is a light which is very prominent in the writings of Kabbalah called the Or Ganuz, the hidden light. And it's a light that preceded the first light when God says, Vayihi Or, let there be light. So it's a light it's a primeval light even before the light that comes, that later God says, let there be light, and God called that light day. So it's a special light that is hidden away to serve the righteous in Olam Haba, in the future to come, meaning after our mortal death. It's a special light. Yes, Shlomo.
Yeah, it's what's also interesting about that light to point out that it's a very different kind of light, is it exists before the sun is created. There's no sun yet,
Not
and you
yet.
have this light, so it's a different kind of light.
It's a different kind of light, and this is what it says in Bereshit Rabbah. Myrna, can you continue there, please?
And God called the light day. Are not light and day synonymous? Learn as follows. The light which was created during the 6 days of creation to shine at day would serve no purpose because of the great brightness of the sun. It cannot shine at night because it was created only for day. Where is this light? It was hidden and set aside for the tzaddikim, the righteous, in the world to come, as it is written, Isaiah 30:26. And the light of the moon shall be as the light of the sun, and the light of the sun will be sevenfold brighter than the light of the 7 days.
So as Shlomo said, this is a light that is different than that of the sun. It's an inner light. It's an inner light. So why would this light be designated as the light that is going to shine eternally in all holy places of our people, in all sacred sites of our people? Bob?
I'm thinking as I read this, one of the functions of light is that it reveals what otherwise is hidden in the darkness. And with a greater light, it would indicate that the sort of hidden or obscure areas of of the Torah that are hard to understand become illuminated, that become understood. There's a deeper understanding of creation, and it's a deeper depth of revelation of understanding of the Torah.
I think you've got it just on. At one point, my Rebbe, Reb Zalman, said to me when I asked a question during the Torah discussion, and I said, Reb Zalman, I don't understand what this is about. And he said, just look at the Ner Tamid. Look at the Ner Tamid and you'll get it. It's the inner light of Torah that you're supposed to. He used the word because he was a Star Trek fan. He said it's the inner light that you're supposed to grok. And I thought about that, and after a while, I kind of got what he was talking about. It took me a while, but I think you're right on, Bob. That it's not the physical light that we're supposed to see. It's the inner light of Torah that we're supposed to see, and I think that's what Bereshit Rabbah is referring to here. Okay, can we go up a little further? And this one I think is also, oh, this is from Shmot Rabbah. Okay, Gertie, can you read that one for us, please? You're muted, so you can't read it. Gertie?
Did you call me?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Can you read this one for us, please?
Sure. Said the blessed Holy One, you watch over my land, and I will watch over yours. What is the lamp of the blessed Holy One? It is the Torah, as it is written. For the mitzvah is a lamp, the Torah is a light. Proverbs 6:23. What is for the mitzvah is a lamp? When one performs a mitzvah, it is as though he lights a lamp before the blessed Holy One and revives his soul, which is called lamp. As it is written, the lamp of God is the life breath, neshama of a person, Proverbs 20:27. And what is the Torah? And what is the Torah is a light? Often a person's heart would like to perform a mitzvah, but his evil inclination says to him, why should you perform a mitzvah and reduce your wealth? Instead of giving your wealth to others, give it to your own child. The good inclination tells him, give for the mitzvah. See what is written, for the mitzvah is a lamp. Just as a lamp, when lit, even 1,000,000 candles made of wax or fat can be lit from it. So whoever gives for a mitzvah does not lessen his possessions. Therefore, it says, for the mitzvah is a lamp. The teaching is the light. Thus, the Ner Tamid's a constant reminder of Torah to illuminate the world to perform mitzvot.
Okay, so we are reminded every time we go into a shul that by looking at the Ner Tamid that we need to perform mitzvot. And that's interesting because most of the time when people look at the Ner Tamid, they are thinking of their loved ones who are no longer with them. But that's not according to Shmot Rabbah, that's not the intent of the Ner Tamid. The intent is to remind us to perform mitzvot. Okay, let's go on. So now we're in the Sfat Emet, a late Hasidic teaching. Okay, let's go down just a little bit more, Audrey. Okay, here we go. So can someone read there, please? Shlomo, go ahead.
Now, scripture also says, for the mitzvah is a lamp, the Torah is a light, and the way to life is the rebuke that disciplines. Proverbs 6:23. The souls of Israel are the wicks that draw the oil after the light. Moses, our teacher, peace be upon him, was that the root of Torah is the light. Thus we read, and they shall bring to you oil of beaten olives, drawn toward the wick. The mitzvot are lamps vessels in which oil and wick are joined to the light. All these elements exist within every person, just as they exist within Israel as a whole. God made humans upright, bearing within themselves the perfect wholeness of all creatures, from the deepest depths to the greatest heights. Aaron the priest was chosen to serve God. This was for the sake of Israel, for after the sin they contained a mixture of good and evil. The Blessed Holy One's counsel was to choose one person in each generation to represent purity, through whom purity would flow to all of Israel. You too can do the same. Set aside one quality or one special mitzvah about which you take fabulous care. Through this, you will be able to draw light and effect repair for all your qualities. Sfat Emet, translated by Arthur Green.
Okay, so if you come into the shul and you're not particularly into the liturgy that day, and nothing is inspiring you, the Sfat Emet says, look at the Ner Tamid and decide if there is one mitzvah or one quality that you can focus on, that you can meditate on, that you can then take out into the world. Draw from the Ner Tamid what you can, and then take it out into the world and do an action. We know that Art Green was particularly attracted to the Sfat Emet because the Sfat Emet was one of the Hasidic masters who spoke frequently of action rather than only of kavanah. That kavanah was important to him, intentionality was important to him, but if one doesn't go beyond kavanah and into the world of action, then it's for naught. It's for naught. So important to go beyond that. Okay, let's go into a modern Chabadnik position. Let's see, who do I see here? Kevin or Marcia, will one of you please read?
Sure, thank you. The Ner Tamid and the olive oil. And you shall command the children of Israel, and they will take for you olive oil beaten pure for light, in order that the constant lamp shall ascend. Exodus 27, verse 20. Concerning the olive and the oil, which is derived from it, the Midrash cites the verse, a beautiful fresh olive, a shapely fruit. Thus God has called your name, Jeremiah chapter 11. By the name of an olive? Are they not compared and called by the name of many beautiful and pleasing trees, such as the vine, the date, the fig, and the cedar? Why does the verse specify the olive as the name of Israel? It answers that there is a very peculiar process associated with olives. When they are taken from the tree, they are beaten and pressed. They are tied with ropes, and heavy stones are placed upon them to crush them. Only then do the olives give their oil. It is the same with Israel. The Gentiles come and beat them in one place and then in another. They pressure them and crush them in oppression. They surround them with armies, and then the people of Israel repent. However, the answer of the Midrash to the question is still not entirely understandable. After all, Israel is compared to many other beautiful fruits. Why does the verse specifically isolate the olive as the essence and main name of Israel? It seems that the answer to this, and the intent of the Midrash, is the peculiar fact that the quality and beauty of the olive is at first not apparent. It is neither beautiful nor majestic. Compared to other fruits, it can be considered vulgar. The beauty of the olive can be seen only after it is beaten, ground, and crushed. In this way, it is quite special. Its importance cannot be realized without labor, and only by working on it can it achieve its purpose. The virtue of Israel is the same. It can only be realized after hard, physically exhausting work. a toll which raises them above the mundane material plane. Moreover, we can learn from a statement of the Talmud another aspect to this olive oil that
Kevin, stop
stop.
there. Stop
Okay.
there, please. So what do you think of this first argument that Israel only shows its beauty after it's beaten, pressed, and crushed, after it's oppressed? When I first read this midrash, I was pretty disturbed by it, and I'm wondering what you think of it.
It makes no sense. First of all, Israel isn't being compared to an olive. Olive trees weren't even around back then, when these people were in the wilderness. But besides
Yes, they were. Olive trees are thousands of years old, and they were
I
there.
mean, where they were in the desert,
Oh, in the
near
desert.
Sinai or wherever. At that point, I don't think there were olive trees there.
Okay.
That's what I meant. Not that they existed. We know they existed. But the whole concept of Israel being compared to an olive tree, to an olive.
That in already in biblical and late biblical times, that comparison was made. And so it's anachronistic in the sense that there were no olive trees in Sinai, let's say. But by the late biblical period, there were those who said Yisrael ke'etz zayit, hazayit ke'Yisrael. So this was a comparison that was made. But what I'm more concerned about is the comparison of the people Israel only showing its beauty after it has been beaten and persecuted and crushed.
A pretty pessimistic view that I don't think represents what any of us think.
What do other people think?
I was reading some of the Sephardim Met because I have a study partner Wednesday morning, and he was referring to the light that we're talking about as the ability of the Jew through the generations to, even when they're suffering, to hold on to this eternal light within them, that, in essence, not giving up hope and still seeing the possibilities.
Right. So that on the one hand, we are disturbed by this analogy, and yet if we look at Jewish history, not entirely untrue that the Jewish people have been the object of persecution and oppression and have risen above it and have survived and have even flourished in situations where there has been a great deal of persecution. So this is what the Chabad Midrash is about. It's about our lachrymose conception of Jewish history, which many people, lachrymose meaning tearful, which many Jews have latched on to as the essence of our history. And nowadays, historians are bulking against that, and they are saying, yes, we have had a history of suffering and persecution, and yet at the same time, we need to recognize the triumphs of Judaism despite that history. So we need to kind of look at all of that and understand that we can't hold only to that particular point of view, and that the ke'etz zayit, that Yisrael ke'etz zayit, that Israel as an olive tree is not only because the olive has been pressed and beaten and crushed, that's the essence of Judaism is beautiful even without the persecution. And so we can take it as understandable given our history, but at the same time, we can't hold on to that as the fundamental reason for our beauty. So let's be careful with that midrash. Okay, let's go back to, I'm also finding this midrash to be unsettling. Raw olives are terribly bitter to eat, though they are not toxic. They are only edible after they have been engaged or pressed or cured. I want to finish reading that. Perhaps the analogy to Israel is because we have to engage with Torah and with community to be pleasant and reasonable. Now that I like. That I like. That I think is better than the image of persecution. It's more an image of engagement, which works better for me. Thank you, Barb. That works better. Okay.
There's
So
a couple
now,
hands up.
oh, I'm sorry, I don't see them. Carol and then Steve.
Yes, I had to leave for a moment. Maybe you discussed this. I was struck by the word repent. Did
Yes.
you talk about that?
No, so please
Oh,
do.
okay. Okay, I resent repent. Repent for what? That we're, I mean, it implied to me that if you beat us enough, we'll say, okay, we'll all go and convert.
Well, I think from the Chabad point of view, what it's saying is we haven't been pious enough. In the post-Holocaust era, in particular, when post-Holocaust dialogues were taking place, the Chabad point of view was, and of course it was roundly rejected by the vast majority of other Jewish perspectives, was one of the reasons that the Holocaust happened was mipnei chata'enu, because of our own sins.
I see. I was taking the Merchant of Venice approach, and that's not germane to this, where he got beaten down and gave up.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
But I see your point, and I recoil against it too.
Okay, good.
Steve?
So I was thinking of, rather than being beaten down and crushed, so to speak, to be sort of a direct commentary on what Israel needs to suffer, but the more universal aspect of a people being tested. And I think that's we could see that without, outside of just the Jewish tradition. I think very often about people who are, quote, born with a silver spoon, close quote, and also those that, just haven't had challenges in their lives. And you get the most out of those who have had to work for things or had to be tested in some way, which doesn't necessarily mean by physical labor or exhausting work or even slave labor, building the pyramids, etc.
Yeah. Okay, let's continue with moreover. Kevin, can you continue there, please?
Yes. Moreover, we can learn from a statement of the Talmud another aspect to this olive oil is that one does not make a blessing over it, as is done for all other food and drink. This is because drinking olive oil, if it is not for the purpose of healing, is damaging to the health. Therefore, even the oil of the olive is not fulfillment of its purpose, in contrast to wine, which is drawn from grapes. The olive, after all the work which is done on it, reaches fulfillment when its oil is used for light. The main enjoyment of the olive is when it is used for light, a more derivative of the original. Continue.
Continue, please.
Whereas the purpose of all other fruits is for eating or drinking their juice, the olive is different in that it is only an intermediary to make something else. Light is the subtlest of all material substances. Therefore, it is considered something spiritual, and accordingly, it indicates the concept of wisdom. This is exactly what it is supposed to constitute, what is supposed to constitute the uniqueness of Israel, and the reason that Israel is called a light to the nations. Without hard work and toil to transcend the material plane and produce something special and spiritual, Israel is not on any higher level than other nations and is probably less than them. The uniqueness of Israel is only realized when she turns away from mere physical existence and through much effort begins to find herself on a transcendent plane. Only in this way, after hard work, can he reach fulfillment, and then she is exactly comparable to the oil of the olive, which is burned for the light of the menorah.
Okay, so what is the rest of this commentary saying, and what does it have to do with the light unto the nations, and what do we think about that idea? I can't see all of you, so just shout out if I don't call on you.
Well, I'll start.
Okay.
To me, I think it's important, at least the piece I can still see on the page, it's referring to a light to the nations. It's not the light to the nations. We don't have the only path forward and to reach God, but we have one that we can share, and ours is a valid point of view.
Right, that's a good Reconstructionist reading of it. Chabad, I think this is, I think that he and she got typed wrong here. It should be she in both cases. But I think that Chabad sees us as the light unto the nations, whereas we see ourselves as a light unto the nations. And the Reconstructionist way of thinking about this is exactly as you articulated it, Kevin, that we are one light unto the nations, but there are others who might also be lights unto the nations. The most important part of this that I see is through much effort begins to find herself on a transcendent plane, just like the olive. And just like the Ner Tamid, it's simply a lit thing unless we think about the effort that has gone into the production of that particular light, and that the light of transcendence is what we're looking for, and we have to think about the olive and what has gone into creating the light from the olive as a transcendent light, which is what we strive for. Okay, let's go on.
There's something else here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really not happy with, if we don't do this work, Israel is not on any higher level than other nations and is probably less than them.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we less than anybody else who doesn't do any of the work? That's the same thing as we got to get the hell beat out of us in order to do good stuff.
That's the Chabad line, and it comes from going back way back into the whole Sinai story, and saying that the people were not really meritorious in any particular way to receive the gift of freedom or the gift of Torah. That we were just lucky.
But Layla, this says we're less than everyone else, unless we do A, B, C, D.
Right, and I don't necessarily agree with this.
Neither do I.
Please believe me, I don't necessarily agree with this. I'm just bringing you a perspective.
Okay.
asking you to respond to it. And if you respond as you're responding, gamzu tova, this too is for the good, Uh, uh, I'm glad you're responding the way you're responding, actually. So, good. Let's go on. Let's go on. We still have many perspectives. You need to move it up, Audrey. Here, I'm just for time's sake, I'm going to just say that yet, as with so much else in tradition, the physical dimension of the Ner Tamid is but one aspect of the Torah's message. And if you can keep going up, Audrey, we can get uh, to the essence of it. The clear oil of the eternal light is symbolic of the spirit of each individual. This is what must be kindled. This is what must burn continuously. Not an oil lamp alone, but the inner lamp of the enlightened human being that continually illumines the way for both self and others. Having discovered this, we can return to the problem of make versus bring. We talked about this last time, about keho and yaviu. Can we make an enlightened human being? No. To make something is to transform one thing into another. When we make a car or a cake, we take raw materials and put them through some transforming process that results in the finished product. This is true of everything we make. Enlightenment is not a matter of transforming one thing into another, but of awakening one thing to its true nature, a different matter entirely. The Jewish term referring to the process of awakening is tshuva, turning. One does not change oneself, a notion both terrifying and ultimately futile. One simply returns to one's true nature. And what is that true nature? As we learned in Genesis, each of us is created in the image of God. Each of us is a microcosm of the divine whole. We cannot be otherwise. Set them up in the tent of meeting outside the curtain. Sue, now we get to a response to your thinking about this, about the location. Why outside the curtain? If the Ner Tamid, the eternal light, is symbolic of the awakened individual, where would we imagine such a person could reside? In some faiths, the individual's goal is his or her personal salvation, but not in Judaism. Concern with one's own salvation is, to the Jewish way of thinking, selfish. There is no salvation for one until there is salvation for all. So where to station the eternal light, the symbol of enlightenment? Before the curtain, before the veil that seems to separate me from you, me from nature, me from God. The Ner Tamid illumines the way, showing that the veils and curtains we place between ourselves and others are illusory. The light of awakening reveals the truth that there are no veils, no curtains. What the enlightened person discovers is that the greater unity, the interdependence of all things, is in Yud He Vav He. And this is the task of the enlightened person, to illumine the truth, to shine the light that will reveal the way through the curtains of illusory, the reality of Yud He Vav He. To burn from evening to morning. Does this mean that the eternal light only burns at night? No, the light is continuous, but the emphasis is on the dark periods of our lives. For it, then the light is most needed, in the presence of Yud He Vav He. One of the rabbinic names for Yud He Vav He is Hamakom, the place where each of us happens to be standing at this very moment. There is no place devoid of holiness. There are only eyes to dim with fear and selfishness to see it. There is no place empty of Yud He Vav He. There are only people too filled with themselves to encounter it. All that is needed is the Jewish way. In the Jewish way is to awaken to the reality that is around and within you. There is no place you must visit, no person you must become. There is only here and now and who you truly are. So Sue, does that help you in terms of your of the explanation of the curtain and the placement of the Ner Tamid? Sue, we can't hear you. Now you're muted.
I said, yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, good. And other responses to this, Shlomo? And I can't see anyone else. Go ahead, Shlomo, and I'll look at the. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, what I like very much about this emphasis on the darkness is when we need to have the light, is I connected up to the Yotzer bracha, Yotzer or uvorei choshech, suggesting to us that darkness is part of what life is all about. As much as light is what life is all about, there's going to be darkness in our lives, and therefore the Ner Tamid is particularly for reminding us in those dark periods about Torah, mitzvot, and all the other stuff we should be reminded of.
That's right. And one of my criticisms, and I believe is in Kol Hanshama this way, is that when we get to the Yotzer, it says Yotzer et Hakol. Am I correct? And that change was made in the early modern period, and it's it's a criticism of mine. In Yeshayahu and Isaiah, it says exactly as you said it, Shlomo. Yotzer or uvore choshech, Yotzer tov uvore et hara. And who creates good and also creates evil. And I prefer that formulation, the original formulation from Isaiah, because it does bring us the notion of light and darkness, which of course we all know is part of life. And when we change it to Yotzer et Hakol, euphemizing it by saying that God creates everything, we are euphemizing, making a euphemism of the vore tov uvore ra. By not saying creates bad, creates evil, or creates darkness, we are kind of copping out from the realities of the adversities of our lives. And it should be, in my view, explicitly stated. Okay, let's go on.
Can I make a comment?
Sure, absolutely.
It seems in this interpretation that there is an ultimate goal, and once you find that light, that reality, you've kind of you found the source, or as opposed to change being the goal. And I sort of believe that, you know, part of searching for the light is the search rather than finding it. And, you know, I think, you know, the Spot Emmett talks about change being the ultimate, not finding a single solution.
Right, right. And all the more reason that we need to bring forth and elevate both sides, both the good and the bad. Okay, one last one, because I notice time is getting short. This is Jewish renewal. Can you raise it up just a little bit more, Audrey? There we go. Okay. Let's see. Myrna Goldenberg, can you read that one for us, please?
Now I'm unmuted. Parshat Hashavua offers us the spiritual challenge of consecration to the priesthood. We are called to be a nation of priests and a light unto the nations, and are given the opportunity to take that priesthood upon ourselves consciously and dedicate our lives to serving the one, the whole, the holy, the holy. Within that challenge, the first requirement is a daily practice of tending their ner tamid, the light of consciousness. This is the steady practice of awareness that underlines all other practice. Slowly, I begin to identify not with the self that is continually changing, but with the one who is paying attention to all these changes. When the flame of awareness is burning steadily within me, it illuminates the act of perception rather than just the object being perceived. At this point, I can begin to discern the lenses through which my perception becomes distorted. I can realize when a passing mind state has colored my reality. Continue.
Yes, please.
The challenge lies in glimpsing the pure light of consciousness and seeing that light refracted into the 10,000 colors of our subjective experience. That experience of reality and its drama of mortality is so interesting, so compelling, so seductive that it blinds us to the light of the eternal shining through it all. It is only through the dailiness of practice, the repeated touch of the eternal, the persistent effort of the heart, the frequent affirmations of a wider expanse, that we begin to free ourselves from the trance of our particular drama and enter into the holiness of conscious presence that crowns this world. Wow, that's heavy. But it's fabulous, to unpack it. It's a very big job for the individual.
And
I mean, it gives the individual a big responsibility
yes,
and a vital one, and the one that undermines or underlies everything we do and see.
and notice what Rabbi Gold is suggesting to us, daily practice.
Yes.
What she's saying is, if we go through the world and we only allow ourselves, how does she put it in the first paragraph? Audrey, can you go down? At the end here.
Rather than just the object being perceived.
Right, rather than just the object being perceived, but that she illuminates the act of perception. She advocates meditation. She advocates chant. She also advocates mindful reading, so that when we think of the Ner Tamid as the light of consciousness, it's not just the physical flame, but it's rather pointed, mindful reflection about the state of our spirituality, the state of our Judaism, the state of the world, the state of our intentionality about what we are going to do in the world. All of that's actually symbolically what the Ner Tamid is about. And she certainly practices what she preaches.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key in terms of not only just metaphorizing the Ner Tamid, but also bringing it into the world of action.
Layla, Rabbi Layla?
Yes.
To me, this requires being out of the picture and in the picture at the same time. You have to set yourself apart so that you can see what's going on and yet be part of what's going on. This is a dualism that becomes a whole if it's done the way she wants.
Right. That takes time and effort.
Yeah.
That takes time and effort, but it's I think it's certainly worth it, because then the intentionality that you have in your life about what you're doing and what you're not doing becomes authentic.
Yes.
Can I just add also, it continually reinforces how you go about living a life mitzvah, because without the daily ritual to take care of yourself, to remind yourself to study, to have that to continually to reinforce, just from personal experience, it becomes much harder to keep going out and doing all that you're supposed to do. So I appreciate that the tradition gives us this opportunity for contemplation and reflection and renewal.
Right, right.
And action. You have to do too.
Absolutely. Audrey, I'm seeing that we don't have the time to do all the rest of this source sheet, but I'd like us to go down to one part where the part I think it's on just keep going. Here, stop. A little, just since the rest of this parsha is about the garments of the priest, and particularly the high priest, I wanted to point out what Baruch Schwartz talks about, the anthropomorphism in the worship of God. He talks about the various parts of the priestly garments as as he puts it, that they are um, they 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 are reminders of God. They are aspects of God placed onto the person of the high priest and articulating the belief system of God. And I was looking for some things to bring to you besides this, but that talk about the significance of uniform, of what a uniform means. And when you see someone in a particular uniform, what are your associations with that individual? What are your associations with an individual you see walking down the street wearing a kippah? What are your associations when you see an individual in military garb and you see her or his insignia and stripes and or stars? What are your associations when you see someone in a medical uniform, and what you think about their role in their profession or in their society? So here, for example, you have the different, he took 4 pieces of the garments of the priests to show the symbolism. The ephod with the 12 tribes on it, a reminder of God. By his very person, we might call him representing the body politic. He personifies the whole of the Israelite people. And then the breastplate, which represents the magic, as it were, of the Urim and the Tumim, which are very, very esoteric, and they seem to have predictive or oracular qualities. The robe worn for its bells, the sound of alerting the divine presence to Aharon's approach as he enters the sanctuary, so he will not die. And the diadem on Aaron's head is said to remove from God's abode any wrongdoing connected with Israel's offerings. Go down just a little bit more. I thought that since we can't do the whole thing, go all the way down because I wanted you to see what the high priest looks like. And each one of these, every single thing that he's wearing has a symbolic meaning to it. The colors, the stones, the turban, the fine linen, all of it. And even with all this, go all the way down to his feet. So here he is, he's walking barefoot, and this is symbolic of Moshe at the burning bush. Take off your sandals, for you are walking on holy ground. So he is humble, even with this ornate royal costume that he is wearing. And with that, my friends, we have reached our hour. And I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to go into the details of the garments. They're actually very fascinating, but I really wanted us to look at the Ner Tamid from different perspectives. It's very, very interesting to see how our different cousins from different parts of Judaism look at this one ritual object and how we can derive different meanings from it. And it's 10 Jews, 11 opinions. And next week we are going to be doing, next week we're not going to be doing, because Kitisa will be taught by, what's her name, Jen Raskus?
Jen Raskus at 11 o'clock.
Right, and at 11 o'clock. And in 2 weeks from now, we will be doing Parashat Vayakhel, which is continuing the donations to the Mishkan. So thank you, and I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.